Oh, there we go. All right. Well, thank you everybody for being here for the second session of the day. For those who don't know me, my name is Brian Bales. I'm the Wellness Arts in the Military Program Manager with the Washington State Art Commission, and I have the pleasure and honor of introducing my friend, Luce Thompson. And she is going to talk about design thinking for creative expression, which this is just a rock star of a program. She's the rock star of a person. I very much enjoy working with her. I can't wait to hear you guys hear from her as well. So there you go. Or you guys,
I'll use that.
You want that
Yeah.
one? All right.
Yep. So, I'm 4'11", so I'm a step. I was in heels for the last hour and a half, so I'm gonna do this barefoot. Feet hurt. Welcome everyone. I'm so excited. I just got done talking about MST, so now we get to talk about design thinking, art stuff. Super excited. Thank you so much, Brian. It has been an absolute pleasure of mine, not only working for Path with Arts, and I want to recognize you guys and say thank you so much. Since 2021, I've been a teaching artist at Path with Art, and last year I met Brian at the last Serving Those Who Serve conference, and we hit it off and realized we're both Marine Corps vets. We have that same sort of way we think about art and creative things, and it just seems like a perfect work marriage. And it worked, and I'm so excited that I got to work with the grant recipients for the past year for the SAP grant, the Self-Directed Art Practice Grant. So I'm going to introduce design thinking and what exactly it is. Before I do that, I'm going to let you know there's a wealth of information inside these slides. I did this for a reason. So I'm going to kind of highlight some of this stuff, but you're all going to get a copy of this so you'll be able to go back and reference things later. The way that my presentation is it's divided into 3 parts. So I'm going to talk to you about the first 2 parts, and the third part is interactive. I'm a Marine Corps vet. I don't like death by PowerPoint, so the quicker we can get you out of your seats and working together, the better. I will ask for any of you who are in the back, if you'd like to move, you can, but you don't have to. But I will be dividing you up into 5 groups a little bit later on. So let's get started. All right, so a little about me. I've got a lot of involvement in a lot of different areas, but my heart is in the arts, the creative arts, and involvement with veteran and military families. I do that through teaching and facilitating, advocacy, community building, grant acquisition, public art, and different board membership and advisory roles. So we'll go over the quick training goals. By the time you leave here, I really want you to understand the benefit of design thinking for veterans. And we're doing this specifically for the veteran population. You're going to be able to differentiate the difference between human-centered design and design thinking. There's a lot of similarities, but they're also a little bit different. You will be using, or we'll be doing at the end, something called a design challenge, which is my super favorite thing. And through that, you'll be able to develop innovative solutions to address specific needs that are also specific to the whole purpose of this conference. And then being able to gain practical tools to implement design thinking and the process, the basics of the process. This is 90 minutes. So I teach this over 8 weeks, but to be able to take the basics of this and implement it into your work in whatever form you do in service of veterans and military families. So we got 3 learning objectives. The number 1 is understanding the transformative power of design thinking for veterans. Differentiating, like I said, between human-centered design and design thinking, and developing innovative solutions for veterans using the design thinking process. So, let me move right into what exactly is design thinking. I love to use this as an example. You see this? We all have them, right? Somebody sat down and had a big design thinking party around this, creating this product, figuring out who are we marketing to, what are their needs, do they need a handle, do they want it to have something cool on the front, should it be able to be hot or cold, all of these thoughts went into the design of these things. and every kind of thing that you see around you. So design thinking comes from the field of product design. Why they separated artists from that a long time ago, I do not know, but my goal is to bring it back. So I created this thing years ago called Design Thinking for Creative Expression. As an artist, oftentimes, and I'll speak from myself, not generalizing all artists, but my brain can be scattered sometimes and all over the place. And I think about something I want to make, and then I think, yeah, but I want to do this, and I only have materials for this, and then I'll start it and then get back to it. So design thinking allows this process to be implemented to make the creating of something a little bit more productive and easy, and where when you get to the end, you actually have something as opposed to just a bunch of projects that you started and never finished. It's an approach that utilizes the principles of design thinking to inspire and enhance creative thinking throughout artistic expression. Like I said, it emerged from the field of product design as a problem-solving methodology, and now it's been adapted to a wide range of creative industries, including K through 12 education. So to give you a little quick history of the design thinking process timeline, so in the 60s, attempts were made to make design thinking a more scientific approach. Fast forward all the way through to 2004. So Stanford University in 2004 started what was called the D School that was founded at Stanford. And through that time, they began looking at, can we implement this in the K through 12 education system? So I was lucky enough in 2014, I got hired on at middle school. My kids were going to middle school, and I was like, how can I be part of it? And I got hired on the spot from the principal, who said, because he's like, do you do anything? I told him I have a bachelor's in sport management and a master's in rehabilitation science. I was looking to work with their sports teams. And he goes, well, what else do you do? And I was like, I do glass mosaic. Why? He's like, you think you could teach middle school students how to do glass mosaic? And I was like, I guess, like that. I don't know if that sounds like the safest idea, but sure, let's try. And so he hired me on the spot. He became one of my best friends, Dr. Eric Shigela. And what he said is, our school is brand new. This is the first year. We're so happy to have your son here. We use this thing called the design thinking approach. And so we're going to give you this little packet. And I thought it was like you learn a few things real quick. And it was about a week before school started. And I was shocked to learn that this whole process is incorporated into every aspect of teaching. And mind you, I'm a science geek. I didn't work with middle school students. I had a few, but I didn't they were mine. It was a little different. But it was so exciting because Eric trusted my creative vision, and I got a blank canvas of a school, and I got kids who had never been exposed to anything outside painting and drawing, right? And so I was like, yeah, you guys can come in the class and we'll work on glass mosaic and build these giant sharks to go outside the school and do murals, and it was just incredible. And the 2 years I spent at Vita single-handedly was the schooling I needed to really understand that if you can master working with middle school students and keep them safe, you can work with veterans. You can work very well with veterans. So, and I say that I'm a Marine Corps vet. I probably should have led with that. But so the design thinking process, in the simplest form, just kind of looking at it, so it's not necessarily stages, right? This is a non-linear process, but there's a beginning point, and it's where you learn about who is your audience, and that's the empathize stage. Then you move into defining, which is where you construct a point of view based on the needs, right? Not based on your own ideas of things, but based on the needs of the people that you're serving. So I'm gonna kind of shift this as I'm talking to it around the veteran community and the military family, military connected community. Once you've understood the needs, then you move into the ideation phase, which is my favorite. It's brainstorming. It's where there is no right or wrong. There is no thing too wild that one can come up with. Whether or not you can do it, you find out later in your prototyping, but the brainstorming allows for people to get together and say their ideas, and no one's gonna go, we can't do that. Really? Let's prototype that and see why not. So once you prototype, what you're really essentially learning then is what works and what doesn't, right? And oftentimes artists will create something and they get to a point where they're like, it sucks, I don't like it. Or I went this far and I don't know what to do next, and it will sit on the shelf for 3 years. And I say that because I've done that. Those are prototypes, right? You get to that ending point, and instead of putting the art away, or instead of putting the writing away or the music composition away, well, now you know what doesn't work. So move forward, get out of your own way, get out of your head, your space, and decide, okay, this is the challenge I came up on. Let me try 5 different things. Maybe they work, maybe they don't, but that's the beauty of prototyping. You do it so long and you figure out you might have 25 prototypes of what doesn't work, but guess what it leads you to? That one thing that does. And so that's where you kind of test your ideas, right? The prototyping and testing are sort of together. And something I learned at Vita that I use with whether I'm teaching veterans or I'm teaching middle school students, I always use this. Failing is really important, right? We actually have to fail. And Eric told me a long time ago, failing is first attempt in learning. When he said that, I was like, ooh, I'm like an expert at failing then. There's a whole bunch of things I've tried and didn't work out. But failing for veterans is not always met with excitement. Oftentimes it's met with, well, if I think I'm gonna fail, why would I even try if I'm not gonna do good at this? So this is where it's really important to understand as you're putting together anything that involves the design thinking process, failing is really essential and should be looked at as a good thing and not be so negative. So we defined design thinking, we learned a little history, and I simplified the process as much as I could. Does anybody have any questions before we move on? Okay, do we all seem a little excited about design thinking? Yeah, this is like my favorite stuff. So let's move into harnessing veterans' creativity through design thinking. So I want to point out that the art gallery, the WHAM Art Gallery, is a visual example of how veterans can transform their experiences into something tangible, meaningful, and it fosters personal growth and healing. So it doesn't matter what the veteran is creating, it doesn't matter what the dependent of a veteran, the spouse of a veteran, it doesn't matter what someone in general is creating. What matters is the process that they're going through, and can they step away from whatever it is they made, whether they show it to the public or not, and realize that there was a process of personal growth and some healing that came along with it. So how do they do that? Through empathy as self-discovery, right? Ideation as the therapeutic outlet, prototyping as a form of empowerment, and testing and feedback as the form of growth. The benefits of integrating design thinking into arts engagement programs for veterans. So let me first start with saying that by integrating design thinking into art programs for vets, we can harness the power of creativity to build resilience, to foster connection, and to promote overall well-being. And some of the specific benefits, like empowerment, where people can learn to have ownership of their own creative process. Not everybody does great in a classroom setting. Some people want to make their art in a very private way, with their earphones on, not disturbed by anybody. Other people like to be chatty Cathy and stand there and making something, but talking with others and in community. We all have different ways that we want to go about that process. Purposeful creation, so veterans will create art oftentimes with intention. And that is something that I've seen. It's not just creating for the purpose of because the teacher told me to. It's a lot of times when I work with the veteran population, they're creating something because it has some deeper meaning that you may not see when you look at the art right away, but to that veteran, they're stepping back going, that's my pain, like that's my trauma, that's my healing, that's my recovery, or those are the secrets I never told anyone. and I didn't know how to put them into words, but I was able to make this music. Or I didn't know where to put this, but I love being in the kitchen, and I love grilling, and I love making food and watching families commune around what I've created. That in itself is an art form. So we've got other benefits like personal growth, and that comes with experimenting and taking risks. Any artist, whether they're an emerging artist, newly beginning, or somebody who's been doing this for 15 years, will tell you that risk taking is a huge part of creating art. If I make something that's very personal to me, and I put it out there for you to look at and judge, that's taking a huge risk that someone might go, well, I don't get it. And I'll go, well, this is what I was trying to represent, But there's a huge risk there, because when you're vulnerable and you're making the art, sometimes we do worry about, like, well, how is it going to be perceived? And what if it's super dark? What happens if we make art that's really dark and disturbing? I, as an art teaching artist, I absolutely love. Like, the more disturbing, the better, because I know that the person who created it has really processed through what it means to them, and that's the way they were able to showcase it. So, understanding the success of the design thinking program and course within the WAM program. So, I'm very big on, I love research, I love understanding how we got to where we are, right? That's just kind of part of my brain. So I didn't want to just assume everyone had a good time during the course with all the grant recipients from the SAP grant. I wanted to make sure that we actually looked at key areas and that we sent out surveys at the end, that we got feedback from the participants. How can we do this better? What did you like? What did you not like? So the way we're going to kind of look at how this program was a success is to look at specific key areas. And so first we'll look at what exactly is the SAP grant. I'll go into that a little bit. I know we touched on that this morning. The demographics of who were the participants, who were the grant recipients that got to be part of last year's SAP grant, or this year's. And we're going to look at the design thinking course structure and the methodology with which I use to teach, the specific art forms and mediums that were actually explored during this last session, and the participant outcomes and how collaboration works into this. None of this is done by one single individual, and I absolutely want to highlight that collaboration. Whenever you're putting together something for the military population, it is better to collaborate with almost too many people than not enough, right? To get a lot of different diverse views and perspectives. So let's take a deeper look at the specifics of this SAP grant. So the self-directed art practice grant offers up to $3,000 to veterans and military-connected individuals to support their artistic journey. It covers the costs associated with pursuing an art practice and fosters personal and professional growth. The things that we require from the applicants is they need to send in an art practice plan, right? Tell us we want to know where you're going to be spending your money. So tell us what exactly you want to do. Send us in any art samples that you might have. That's not to say that an artist who is emerging and wants to start working, maybe they've been doing photography for 10 years and all of a sudden they want to transfer into a different medium. That's not to say that they can't send in 3 art samples of photography, but now they want to go into oil painting, right? So, and a sample budget shows how time and funds will be used. So we asked them to do just a basic sample budget, doesn't have to be anything too big. And then the timeline for this past grant was that the application opened in 2023 in October. The deadline was November of 2023, and then we sent out notifications, I believe, the beginning of January for the people who were accepted as the grant recipients. So let's take a look at who was in the class. It was an incredibly diverse community. We had 4 spouses of U.S. military veterans. We had 2 active duty service members. We had 4 children of veterans. And I want to highlight, when we said children, we meant those over 18, right? So it wasn't, we weren't working with 9-year-olds on the thing, but I've already done my time with middle school. So when we say child of a veteran, we meant those who are over the age of 18. And I think it's covered up over there, but U.S. military veterans, we had 31. Of the veterans, they represented all branches of service and different various eras of service. And they were from all different locations throughout the state of Washington. So they weren't just in one specific region, they were from all over Washington state. And we have 41 participating artists in this last one. So the course structure and methodology, this was kind of broken up over 6 months. So I got to work with all the grant recipients for 8 weeks. I had classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we met for 2 hours. So you could either come in on a Tuesday or a Thursday. If those times didn't work for you, the good part is that it was always recorded, and so you could watch it later. So if you had a work thing come up, and you couldn't make it, or you had to leave early, you didn't miss the content. One of the things about being a veteran and being able to offer art classes for veterans is I know that we like to know what's going on in advance of it happening. We like all the information up front. So what I do is I design reading materials. I send out a very thorough workbook. It was a 90-page workbook that went over everything, and it was a PDF, so you were able to print that out if you wanted. We really highlighted the idea of structured project planning. That was what the basis of the design thinking class was. And then we went through that for 8 weeks. The first couple weeks, and this is normal in like any art class, everybody's a little like kind of shy, a little afraid to share, ask questions, and then usually by week 3 is where I see people open up, start to ask more questions. I see the chat just running over and over. There's things in the chat. By week 2, I think it was, we had one of the veterans from the class decided to open up a Facebook page for all the grant recipients. And I was like, yeah, I think that's totally doable. So they opened up a private Facebook page, and they were able to communicate offline, well, actually online, but outside of the time of the class, and really get to know one another and support one another through the process, which was amazing because that wasn't something we required. That was something that just organically happened. And I think a lot of them still communicate. I've seen the page lately, and there's still stuff going up. So the feedback sessions after the 8 weeks consisted of 30 minutes where I got to meet with the veteran one-on-one, and I asked them, okay, where are you in your design thinking process? What does your specific timeline look like, right? And so I met with people between April and May, knowing that they had to have their stuff done by June or was it July? By the end of June. They had to have all of their stuff completed. So I work with them on individual timelines, right? So some people said, well, I've got this work thing and I don't work the same hours every week. How do I schedule and carve out time? So we went through what works for that person. Then some other people said, I'm working 2 jobs. I really want to do this, but I just took on 3 extra days and I've got a minimal hours to do this. So we worked on that. And then there were people who said, look, I'm a total procrastinator and I'm definitely not where I should be right now. How do I overcome that? And so it was really good for me to get to know each artist individually and figure out what works. Medical stuff came up. We need to work around that, right? That's not where I go, oh, that sucks, I guess you can't do it. That was a part where we go, well, how can you do it, right? And what's gonna work for you now, and how can we work around those challenges and barriers? And then the final presentations, so all of the artists had to adhere to the guidelines that were set by the Washington State Art Commission, WAM, SAP grant. There's so many acronyms in that, so we'll just move forward. So what specific art forms or mediums were explored? So We had a bunch of different ones, right? And you can see that on the left-hand side, so it wasn't just visual arts. But I want to kind of highlight some of the projects that were included. So one of the veterans in the class made one of the grant recipients made a one-of-a-kind tiara, a silver tiara that you can actually see. It's on showcase in the art gallery. It was made from silver, 24 karat gold, Montana sapphires, and embodies the artist's journey of skill and emotion, representing a pinnacle achievement in wearable art. There was some amazing art that came out. We had acrylic paintings, just some really, really cool stuff it was such a blessing to me to get to walk through that journey with the artists and see their prototypes. And we have an artist here who actually has a book of all of their paintings in there, and the prototype is in there. And as soon as I saw that, I got chills and went, oh, you put that in the book? Because it's all part of it, right? So let me move to, does anyone have any questions up to this point? Yes.
I have just a really quick comment, if
Yeah.
I can make one real quick. I'm just gonna grab the wireless mic real quick. So for folks in here who are interested and want to apply for the grant, and I mean, some of the work, we don't expect everyone who applies to be like a professional artist, right? We don't even care if you've ever done it before, right? It can be your first time doing something. We welcome all in any of whatever spot you're at in your life, in your art making, whatever it might be. The weirder the better. If you've got a crazy idea that you're like, I don't know if this is considered art or not, it probably is. Just apply or ask me. So yeah, that was my comment. Thanks.
Thank you. So one of the things we looked at to measure, the success of this is how did participants perceive the value of the design thinking course? And so the things that were measured for the outcomes of the course were accommodations. Did we, give accommodations if they were needed? Course content, quality of the workshop, learning outcomes, the list is on the left. But the most important thing is that when asked what aspects of the workshop were most useful or valuable, these are just some of the responses. It was overwhelming how much the impact flowed through the every grant recipient had a unique impact that was on a deeper level than just, I like to do it. I liked art, right? It was more like this really, really defined something specific for me and helped me to come out of my box. It really changed how I believed or perceived myself as an artist or as an art professional or as an emerging brand new artist. So the design thinking process and seeing the perspectives of other artists, again, this was like a collaborative effort, right? We were all in class together working on different things, but there was a collective struggle. Everybody was working together to go, how does this apply to my art practice? The ability to share with other people and not be so isolated. Oftentimes, people can, especially artists, right? We isolate. We want to spend time in our studios. We want to be alone doing our artwork sometimes, but it can be really isolating. And I know myself, I've said to my husband a few times, I'm lonely. And he's like, what do you mean you're alone? You're always doing stuff. I said, yeah, but when I do my artwork or I do writing, I feel really alone. Because I'll be in the studio for 8 hours and there's nobody to talk to except my audiobooks, and I'm sitting there laughing like a crazy lady and then I'm doing glass, but it can be a really isolating experience. And so being able to connect at least once a week with other artists who are having those same feelings, and knowing that they're working on their own art, but I'll see them every Tuesday or every Thursday, it definitely reduced feelings of isolation. Collaboration, so this is one of my most favorite things. Again, I don't think any of this happened because of any one person, and the benefit of us collaborating together led to improved problem solving, increased efficiency. It boosted morale, right? Like liking the people you work with is important, and I'm just gonna say that out loud. Liking the people that you have to work with to achieve a common goal it has an effect on who you are when you're no longer at work. And so if you enjoy the collaboration with the people that you're working with and the things that you're doing and the populations you're serving, you're a happier individual when you're not at work. That's why I love art. Art's so fun. So I want to ask real quick, does anybody have any questions at this point before we move on to part 2? And I did not start my phone, so let me see where we're at with time. Okay, any questions? Yes?
So I saw that you said, these are children that are 18 or older. Is that like minimum they have to be 18?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Like students, it doesn't matter if they're students?
Oh, no, that's fine. As long as they're 18 and considered adult, yes. I have 3 that are over 18, I'm like, they're not really
Not necessarily the same thing.
Yeah, oh no. How society sees it.
Sign a contract.
Right.
Yes,
Yes, as long as I can sign a legal contract, perfect. So let me go ahead and move on. Are there any other questions real quick? Okay, so now we're gonna look at the difference between human-centered design and design thinking, and I'm gonna try not to bore you with all of this, but I do want you to understand the difference. Part of that is because some of you may know, some of you may not know, the VA has adopted now utilizing human-centered design in the services that they provide to veterans. And I Googled that and I was like, when did they start with design thinking? And there was I found PDFs of just incredibly interesting information to where I realized that the VA as a whole now has realized the importance of when we serve people, we need to deeply understand their needs and how we can best serve them. And I was like, you guys are design thinking and not even knowing it. So human-centered design is a creative approach to problem solving that puts people at the center of the design process. So this is what the VA is currently doing. May not be in all areas, but they're certainly beginning to warm up to the idea of why the impact of this has such a good and positive outcome. Design thinking is more of a broader problem-solving methodology that incorporates, right? We want to understand the human-centered design and the needs of the users as the core component, but we want to go past that. So this is what people need, but if we give them what they need, we also need to ask for feedback. And then from the feedback, we need to adjust our designs and our services and our products, and then we need to test it again and ask for more feedback and refine it and ask for more feedback. And we do that over and over, and what the outcome is quality services and programs for military families, military connected individuals, and veterans that are not cookie cutter. And we ask those veterans and we ask those people to be part of the design process instead of just assuming that we know best because we've studied it. So the similarities, like I said, they're often interchangeable and they've got a lot of similarities. Some of these I'll start with are the user focus, right? Prioritizing the needs of the user, the iterative process involving continuous testing and refinement, creative problem solving, encouraging innovative and my favorite out-of-the-box thinking. I love the people that come into workshops and things like this and work together and they have ideas that people go, I never thought of that. Those are the people I tend to gravitate to, and the ones where I'm like, tell me more. I really want to hear more about that because it's new and it's different and it's something one hasn't thought about. If you think back to when COVID hit, as a global community, we were innovative. We realized very, very quickly, like we can't do things the way they were, and we came up with innovative, new, creative approaches. Because of it, I have a job, right? I have an amazing job with Path with Art. It was, hey, can you teach veterans online how to do art? Okay. You know, I used to go in person and do these things, but now I get to do that. But I look back at COVID and with all the devastation of it, there was an incredibly moving time where as a global community, we were able to be the most innovative I've seen in my lifetime, right? And where I walked away from that going, if we can do that then, let us not let us not lose that. That's a good thing. Let's think back to how we did it then and implement it into new things now. So how is human-centered design and design thinking different? So this is the easiest way to remember it. Human-centered design is how we do what we do. Design thinking is why we do what we do, right? And so this is one of those things, you may want to take a picture of it, but this is really to remember the difference between the two. Human-centered design is the how, and design thinking is the why. So some of the differences, right, if we look at the focus of human-centered design is user needs and experiences, whereas design thinking, the focus is more the problem solving and the innovation. Not to say that the user needs and experiences don't matter, but when we're doing design thinking, we're really look at more of what is the problem and how do we solve it. And if we don't think we can solve it, do we need to go back and assess if maybe we're looking at the wrong problem? And sometimes it's not always a problem, it might be a challenge, but it also might be an opportunity, right? So sometimes there's a need, we think we know best, we lead with something, and then we realize, wait a minute, we really need to take 5 steps back and reassess. We thought we were providing this service for this population that needed it, but maybe we should actually interview the population and find out what they need and ask, how can we best serve you before we just roll out these new programs and assume that they're just gonna work. So, that's my little spiel. So, applying human-centered design and design thinking to veteran-focused initiatives. So, let me see what I wanna highlight in here. Probably the biggest thing is how do we do this? Through co-creation, right? That's the one thing, again, you're gonna have a copy of this, you can kind of go back and check this out, but co-creating and involving veterans as active participants in the design process. When was the last time Nike called you and said, we know you wear our sneakers. We've seen you all over social media with our sneakers. We'd like to invite you in because we wanna know what your life is like and how you use your sneakers. And you're not a professional athlete, you're just you, right? But you get a call from Stanley, right? They call you, we see that you're drinking from our cups. We wanna know what you need. We don't get those, maybe you get those phone calls, I don't get those phone calls, right? I don't get called by the company Blick and we see you use our art materials, we wanna know how we can best, we don't get those. But that's not to say that we shouldn't do that. If we're serving veterans and we're serving military families and we're serving those who served, right? We encompass through all of that. Why are we not involving them in the design process when we're offering services, when we're offering programs, when we're offering things like that? It just, to me, it doesn't make functional sense, right? If I'm gonna make something for someone, like an art project, and somebody commissions me, do you know what I spend time with them doing? Who are you? Where are you going to put this art? What kind of person are you? Who's going to view the art? What does it mean to you? Tell me a little bit about your history. I want to learn about who you are as the person who's commissioning me, so that when I make it, I have a deeper understanding other than this person's paying me for a service. Okay, so to summarize, design thinking offers a broader framework for innovation in veteran services. We kind of looked at how we do this. We define the specific challenge or opportunity, out of the box thinking again, prototyping and testing and refining. So I think what we're gonna do now is, let me ask real quick, does anyone have any questions or comments? Is this making sense? And we understand why design thinking should be kind of included? Okay. And I'm so excited to be able to share this and see why this is so important, especially for this community and the populations of veterans. I just think it's a long overdue thing. So let me move forward. Can someone tell me real quick, what time does this one end?
It ends at, started at what, 2:45?
4:15.
4:15.
Okay.
You got time.
Okay. I just want to make sure. Okay, let me get a sip because we're getting close to the interactive part. Okay, so let me give you an example because this example, what this is going to help us understand is a few things. The most important is that the example I'm about to go over is going to help you when I separate you into groups and you get a design challenge and you have to work together looking at one specific population of veterans. Each group's going to have a different one, or of veterans, military families, the whole military community as a whole. And so what this is going to do is it's going to give you an example of what I'm looking for from you through the design challenge. So I took something that, again, I live in Southern California. It's a little bit different in Oceanside than it is in Washington, but similar to Washington, it's very different if you go to San Diego than if you're in LA, than if you're in Central Coast California, than if you're up in like Big Sur. Like, it's not the same way, and that's very true in the state of Washington. I've been a few places here now, and they're all very different. And I think one of the common things, no matter what state you live in, is how do you best serve the populations that are more rural? I can never say that. I have a New York accent. I can't pronounce ours. But the rural population seems to be the one that's, I don't want to say forgotten about, but sometimes more difficult to understand how to best serve that population. And so I use that as the example. How do we improve access to programs for rural veterans using a human-centered design and a design thinking approach? And so I'm going to kind of break this down because this is what I'm going to challenge you with doing. So the way I went about getting the answer to that question is first to understand what is the problem. And to understand the problem, I need to empathize with that community, right? So by doing interviews and focus groups to explore, what are the challenges? What are the barriers? Is it transportation? Is it technology? Is it awareness of available resources? Are there cultural barriers that we're not aware of? So that's where you empathize, right? That's your first part of the design thinking process. And then the part you're going to be tasked today with is taking all those ideas of what might be the challenge or the problem and clearly defining what it is. So you're going to clearly articulate the core problem, such as, for example, lack of transportation or limited availability of programs or insufficient outreach. Once you've done the empathize and you've defined what the problem is, then you move on to the second part, which is developing a solution. And again, you're all going to be in groups. You're going to get one specific veteran population per group, and it's going to be up to you to understand and talk amongst each other what might be some of the challenges for this specific population, and what do we as a group collectively feel like we're bringing some information about this. What do we want to kind of focus that core thing on and look and define what the problem is. Once you define that, then you develop a solution through ideation, prototyping, and testing. Obviously, we're not going to be able to build prototypes, right, in like a half hour, but you're going to use it's great. You have an unlimited budget. Think of it like that, right? You can, whatever, the wildest things you can come up with, because at the end of the day, that's where the ideas start. Imagine you had a blank check, and imagine you were able to serve this population. And then from there, you start to kind of put like more and more, I don't know what the word is, but you start to funnel down like what can we actually do. Maybe we don't have a blank check, maybe we have $1,000, maybe we have $500, maybe this is something that we don't have any funding for. How do we come about solutions when we have zero funding? So you're gonna brainstorm solutions, you're gonna prototype by developing a pilot program, right? And again, this is all in your mind. You're gonna create that program, but you're gonna think about some of the specifics of what that might look like a mobile service unit that could provide healthcare, right? Coming up with some ideas, and then evaluating it, and you're gonna make mention in there that how are you going to connect with those communities? Are you gonna call them? Are you gonna knock on their door? And we're talking rural veterans. How are you actually going to connect so that you can get their feedback? And then you'll make necessary adjustments based on the findings. So when you're in your groups, one of the ways you can do this is if somebody in here lives in a rural community, and that's the population you're looking at, you can say, hey, these are actually some of the needs. So I really encourage you to participate and most of all, communicate with one another. So then the third part of this is actually applying human-centered design and the design thinking principles. Co-creation, we really want to think about how do we involve the populations we're talking about. So how do you involve rural veterans in the design and implementation process to ensure that the solutions meet their specific needs? Again, think back to COVID. What happened when we were told to stay home? And we still had to connect and we still had to go to work. We found a way. A lot of us showed up on Zoom with business on the top and pajama pants on the bottom, but we found a way to show up for one another. We found a way to communicate and connect even though we weren't able to do that face to face. So I want you to use some of those principles and ideas and reflect on your own experiences during that global isolation for a little bit. How did you make things happen when you had certain challenges and barriers in place? So iteration is super important. You want to continually refine the program. You want to say this works, but this doesn't. Well, that if something here doesn't work, that doesn't mean we move to the implementation phase and push it out. That means we address what doesn't work and we try again to make that work. And then you're all here for a reason, so I deeply encourage you, when you get the specific veteran population, please, please, please collaborate with one another. Give each other business cards. If you're like, hey, I didn't know that you work with this population, so do I, our company does this. Well, collaborate, because the idea is to teach you how to do this, but the goal is that you actually do it when you leave here. And so that takes me to part 3, which is the fun part. Okay, are you all excited about I hope I worked up this design challenge to be fun. So it's 3:30 and we have till 4:15. Yes. Okay, so originally, and I think we still might stick with this, I'm gonna give y'all 20 minutes, but I might give you a little bit more time than that if we have it. I wanna have time at the end for each group to kind of share with us what they came up with. And then I do want to leave a few minutes at the end for any questions or any reflections from this. So let me see. What you're all going to accomplish is, this is the Rapid Innovation for Veterans Support Design Challenge. You're all going to get a packet of information, and it's going to have everything that you see on the screen. So I don't want you to feel like, how do I remember everything that she's showing me right now? I thought ahead, printed everything out, and I also took the liberty of realizing that for each of the populations, some of you in the room might not understand the needs of the population. So I gave you a cheat sheet, and I gave you certain examples that gives you examples of certain challenges that those particular populations might face and potential solutions. Here's what I'm going to say about that. If your group meets together and you look at that and you're all familiar with the population in some form, don't use the one that's on the sheet and make it easy. Come up with your own. But if your group meets and you're like, we really haven't served this population, I'm not 100% sure yet what the needs are, then by all means use that. It's there as a guide, but I really want to get you using your brain to think outside the box. And so the 5 categories are rural veterans, and you cannot use my example from before. So rural veterans, LGBTQ plus veterans, minority veterans, women veterans, and then families of veterans. So those are the 5 populations, because that is what the conference is focused around. right? Partnership in serving everyone, and so that's what you will get. Some additional things, again, focus on collaborating with one another, resource management. Think about solutions that are not only efficient but sustainable. It doesn't work if it only works once. I'm going to repeat that. Whatever it is, it doesn't work if it only works once. How many of you in here are veterans? How many of you have ever been to a veteran thing and it's a one-time thing, and the one time you go, they don't want to see you again? You filled the quota, they took the picture, and they don't see you again. And then you go home and you go, I had such a great experience, but it didn't work. And it doesn't work because things that only happen once don't work. Make it sustainable. There should be, I'll just leave it at that. Make it something that is sustainable, that grows, right? Think about the most basic way to serve. Even if you've got the ideas of the best possible way with the most amount of resources, start small so that you can show that this is a sustainable, buildable project or service. I hope I really drilled that in. The things that only happen once do not work in the military community. So this is what I'm going to ask from everyone when you get done. And again, the instructions are in there. So I want to know the veteran population that your group was given. You don't get to choose. You get surprised. You're going to identify what the challenge is. And the way I'd like you to do this is write one sentence. Right? Give me one solid sentence. So all you English majors, step up to the plate at this time, right? You're going to give one solid sentence of what the identified challenge for the population is and the proposed solution. That doesn't have to be a one sentence thing. And I also want to make sure that we say, like, you can draw. You can move your body to share with someone. If you're a hand talker like I am, like, feel free to get up and move around. You don't have to just sit there. If this is an idea in your head that you can see, draw it out. If you're a visual person, take a piece of paper, draw out your ideas, write them out, act them out, sing them if you need to, whatever works for you. And then, who are the potential partners? And when I say that, I don't want you to go, the potential partners are like Nike. Like, I want you to think within the state of Washington, within the region and the area that you propose to serve, who are the potential partners? Are they in this room? Are they at this conference? If they are, hunt them down, give them your card, demand that they give you theirs. Sound good? Okay, so I'm super excited. How are we gonna divide into 5 groups? Let's see. How many? Let me see what. Should probably look at what my own instructions say. All right. Why don't we say like maybe 6, 7, no more than 10 to a group? Does that work? Do we have more than 50 people in here?
No.
No? How about like 8 to a group? 5 to 8 people per group? And so I need 5 groups. So you can stand up, move your chairs around, figure out how you want to do that.
Let me hand these out.
Yeah, we can just put them all over the place.
Okay.
So
get a group
please
here.
move your,
Here's a group.
please rearrange the furniture. If you'd like to move your chairs in a circle or you can unattach them or you can just
It's a whole chain.
So I need everybody in 5 groups.
There you go.
There you go.
Let me make sure we have that before we start.
Are they new?
All right, do we have our 5 groups? We do?
Yeah, they come up.
All right, you know what? Each group, make sure you have a white piece of paper up above where your group is, and then I'll know you're a group. We'll start with this group right here. You're going to be group 1. In the back over there, you're all going to be group 2. On the back, on the right side, you'll be group 3. In the middle, group 4. And over here in the front, you're group 5. So,
Oh, sorry.
now that you're in groups, I want you all to pick one person from your group to come up here. And you're going to choose a veteran community or military community. So, pick whichever one you want. All right, you get to pick one. You're welcome. You get to pick one.
Doesn't matter what number.
Doesn't matter. Just pick one.
Just get one.
All right, I need you to do me a favor real quick. So, I would like to have one person from each group go ahead and write at the top of your paper what community, what population you're serving. Just so when I walk around, I know who it is. So, it should say on the first page what population you got.
Are you the only guy?
You got women veterans?
Yes. So I'm going to do a lot of listening.
I am very happy that you are in that group because you'll be able to share with others. That's amazing. All right, so y'all got women veterans. Who's got the folder?
Oh.
So the instructions are in the folder.
Okay.
What y'all have to do. So you might want to choose one person to read the instructions, one person to write things down, and then. Okay, so this is instructions, this is cheat sheet.
Lovely. Thank you. All right. This one's already done. Good job.
So, the challenge, identify external adapters. Design thinking process.
I know courses, but I know so little about moms. You guys must be able to better information and identify. We're excited. That's what I do now. I would do that.
Literally articulate the problem and its impact on the children. Brainstorm creative solutions that address the identify challenge, potential partnerships and collaboration, inform programming that's the outside activity, including peak moments, partnership, and
You already know some of the things that.
so if you have questions, let me know. Yeah, besides the answers, provide minutes.
So sheet 1
A
was the
specific
instructions.
challenge.
Sheet 2 is the.
Is there like options to go to challenges or we come up with our
Yeah, you don't need the cheat sheet, then you just go right from the instructions and making sure that you
Women veterans
all the
challenge.
stuff that's on there.
Challenge. Okay,
Let me know if you have
so
questions.
number 1, childcare, employment, or health care.
Okay, so that's what she was saying. We don't have to use my thing. But I'll have understanding of
Potential solutions, support programs that address work-life balance, child care support, or women's specific health care.
I have a few women veterans and their challenges.
Not finding a job, but like finding a job that fits them because they were so traumatized, I guess.
Yeah.
And they're just, I have a couple, they don't want to leave their house. Yeah.
As a female veteran, I was actually talking to Michelle where she was asked, like, were you living in MSP? And I was like, no, I don't think so. And then the more we talked, I'm like, you know what, I think it was. And it's, well, I mean, it's all in there. I mean, it was, like I said, earlier, it was like from the other women that I served with, actually, was certain women. So, and I think that the majority of female veterans have probably experienced one form or another of military sexual trauma. No. So I think that's what we all do. And it is a thing, like the population, like into the first females on. So it sounds like there was 55 people in 2000. So what it would feel like. It was interesting.
I mean, a lot of my clients are out of their house into the world and finding work or even going to doctors. I have this one that had to hang out on her doctor's appointment. She just can't handle it.
Yeah, so what is the challenge? Identify the challenge.
Yeah, emphasize the challenge. Maybe it's just women, like sexual trauma, like
Their healthcare,
their mental health.
So Chuck,
And so we're talking about age things, right? So there'll be a
I guess I probably know the answer before I ask it, but probably would just calling it out. Do we all feel like we know the population well enough to like come up with our own solution without looking at the cheat sheet? I'm not a veteran, but I do identify as a woman, so I got 1 out of 2. I would defer to you all for. I know you work with.
Define clearly articulate the problem and its impact
some of it's stigma. So what I've heard that before too. That anybody like, and again, being one of the first women on a worship, I was immediately labeled a whore by the spouses. Why else would I want to be on the show if I didn't want to have sex with homeless? So it's like the stigma of female veterans. Age, I think, is one of the issues that kind of contributes to that behavioral health and getting like, I don't really want to deal with any of these people. Yeah. You know, like I don't want to talk to any of them.
even acclimating back into society, right? Because the experience of trauma and knowing how to feel safe and comfortable when you're dealing with whoever is victimized. So whatever the trauma is that's being there, that is causing you not to want to leave your house.
Still trying to stay on age. Sorry.
That's okay.
Similarity, right? Because it's like that.
So maybe it's like a factor of after having experienced trauma from being in the military, there's a hesitancy and just even fear of engaging in supportive services because of the trauma that
I mean, a lot of this.
I feel like the main client that I have, she's just feeling unsafe. She's she's a lot of
Well, yeah, especially when it comes to like MST, because a lot of the times, and it's a population just like anybody else. There's a lot of victims. You put yourself in that situation. You went out with these people, you know what they wanted, you know how they acted.
internalized misogyny.
Yeah, that you know, it's thinking that it's and it's contributes to I don't want to go out there and screw up again and have something happen because of me, you know.
So maybe a through line is self-worth.
Yeah, I think some of it's
Yeah,
probably.
Well, that was oh, was it? Oh, okay, sorry. I
recovery, and I do my 12 steps.
just says identify as
First step.
mental health.
Like, what's your part in it? And I'm like, looking at and I just really disagree with my sponsor. I'm like, no.
And also
Yeah, but like the,
One of the things my past experience was a home house woman, and so meeting my clients where they were at. So what that looked like for me was different than my other case managers, because I was able to manage the facility. So like something as simple as before I would meet with anyone, I'd go, are you comfortable meeting with me alone? And are you comfortable with me shutting the door? For different women, those answers vary. And so just understanding your own perception, you know, because a lot of the women at the shelter were victimized by men, so I had to be cognizant of that when I was trying to approach them, because I've never done anything to them, but it could look like something else.
So what does that mean?
That's the part where the problem is.
So I guess it could be like service providers understanding their
It's clearly articulating the problem and its impact on accessibility.
I feel like what you said is what's the next stage, where we propose solution, the ideation stuff, like
Yeah.
what you're saying is what we want service providers to do, not necessarily part of the problem. That's great.
So like, yeah, like education for providers would be that piece of it.
Yes.
So on this, I think it says
So you have about 7 minutes, not to scare anyone, but make sure that as a group you've got stuff written down. Draw it on the paper, crumple it up, throw it at each other, whatever works, but make sure that you've got some answers to the questions on the screen.
Yeah.
So what's the
We're getting solution.
Parentheses counseling or what? I mean, what do you mean safe space based on what else? What is that?
Or like I guess services, finding safe spaces and safe services.
Trauma-informed service provider.
Yeah, that trauma-informed care is a big
And then our solution is like, if we have, say, in the extreme of women who are afraid to leave their homes, like how can female veterans learn about the services that are available to them without having to put themselves in a position where they're just walking into an unknown, one-stop space and having to advocate for themselves. How do we?
I do well, the solutions first, right? And then with our solutions. And those
Yeah.
But I guess part of it too would be like having these ones find out about it.
So where are we going?
Solutions that address the identified challenges.
So is that the fourth one?
The fourth one is the prototype. Briefly outline the potential
So I think actually one of the big ones is trauma-informed care. There's actually like a whole set of training and it's like a new culture for service providers that trauma-informed care piece of it, which is maybe like finding more, I guess, providers that do have that trauma-informed care stamp of approval specifically for female veterans. Like we encourage service providers to get that certification to be a trauma-informed care service provider. Because that is something you actually get, like a thing like you were one of those people, you're good to go.
Yeah. So what are you guys from Spokane or?
I'm from like near Seattle.
Seattle?
Seattle, yeah.
Seattle, Walla Walla. Okay. We're from Spokane. So what services are in our communities, your communities that would be where we have a VA hospital? There's VA hospital, we have Frontier Behavioral Health. So there's government and also civilian programs, behavioral health.
So we have the VA and then we have our STWS website.
Now, are you guys with SS?
Yeah.
Okay, so are we. Yeah, so we're brothers and sisters in the cause, right?
I'm with the
Yeah,
Navy.
You're what?
I'm with the Navy. So.
Well, that's
Department of
okay
Defense,
too.
Yeah. We're Department of Defense.
So yeah, you know, we live in, it's kind of a small town, and so we have
Yeah, and that kind of lends to the rural. So there's, when I put in services or solutions,
Like the training providers of trauma informed
I think, yeah, so
care.
we need to like locate providers of trauma informed care training and certifications and get those people to start, or get the service providers to take this.
Right.
Kind of bouncing off that, the trauma informed piece, I think it's so pivotal because like a simple interaction between, say, a veteran receptionist that doesn't have the understanding of trauma informed. For example, the vets we work with, they'll have like 3 meetings with us, and then we send them to a meeting at HCHP, and at that point they've already had 6 hours of meetings. They might be upset, or short-tempered, not be able to comprehend all those things. And so having the trauma informed care at the center, us as a community.
And even so we're here support because they provide here support. They go into situations unaware of like really where to start.
Yeah, it's almost like a mentorship sponsor.
In Seattle, you guys have healthcare for vets.
Oh, I should say I'm like north. We're north of Seattle, so yeah, I'm not like.
But there are quite a few places that do provide that. So we have like one of the VA hospitals there. There's a lot of referrals specific.
and when we think about like rural areas, because we have like Hallville and which are really small towns that really have very minimal services, and a lot of our veterans aren't able to travel.
Right.
You know, they can't jump in a car. Some don't even, because we work with a lot of homeless veterans, and so they don't have cars, they don't have transportation, and so when you're in a rural community, that makes it even more difficult to find services that are available that, you know, trauma-informed care or anything like that. So so it really creates creative approaches for the people who can travel.
Okay, let me ask you real quick. How are you guys planning to connect to the population of women?
So we've taken a direction of trauma-informed care right now.
Okay.
And, you know, we're still workshopping.
Okay.
But mostly it's just how do we get all of these varied service providers, both rural and urban and you know, many different sectors of service and I guess, background, trauma-informed care, you know, understanding.
Perfect. So what I would like you to think about, that's the out-of-the-box approach to this, is you're going to need feedback for whatever you're proposing to do. And like I told you the other day, people like free shit and free food, right? Free food, free stuff that you're giving away, people show up. What kind of way are you going to make direct contact with veterans? It doesn't have to be with women veterans. It doesn't necessarily always have to be in person. It can be an event online, but it's got to be fun. People are not going to give you their real feedback if you are asking it in a sterile way, in a sterile environment, right? So if you really want to know what women veterans need, what is the overreaching thing you're going to do to connect with them to make them feel like they're not just there to give you the answer you're looking for a specific thing, but an out-of-the-box, paint by number, sip and paint, something like that. Like, and that's what I'm looking for from each of you. Like, you all are doing the exact same thing in a really great way, but I want you to think about the fun aspect. How do you connect on a more human level? What would you like to be able to do? Like, what kind of event would you like to show up to where they're going to ask you, how can we best serve your population? What creates a fun environment, if that makes sense?
So in our programs, and she's in Walla Walla, we're here in Spokane, we're supportive services for veteran families. And so in our situation, we work with homeless veterans, of which, a portion of those are female veterans. And so that's how we connect, is more on a one-on-one. And so through a intake process, we begin to understand their needs, not only housing, but medical needs, behavioral health, addiction, substance abuse. And so we don't have a event per se. And so I think what we're looking at is how do we identify and refer. And so in this case, we're working with we identify many suffer from speed, behavioral health, and then how do we direct them to the community? What is it, through the hospital? Is it through some other trauma-informed care agencies? And that's kind of the approach we're taking on this.
Part of how that came about was what we did put there with any sort of communication. We were bringing up this, she's got clients that there is no a lot of these things.
Yep.
So that's kind of like, we got onto this. She's like, well, how do you get the services that will understand that they have
So I want you to think about how would you address then the individual women veterans, and how would you address a larger group of women veterans as a whole. So if you already have solutions that work for the individual, refocus to the group as a whole. And then is there another way to get her to connect? What would she like if it was off to you? Is there a way, could she connect with art? Could she connect with music?
She has like a whole art studio.
So then that might be one of the solutions, is that you host a in-person and online art event that's a trauma-informed art event that brings together women veterans and people who can provide trauma-informed care, but they're all doing it by collaboratively working through art.
I've got something they're working on and it's fun.
Yes, something to do.
Well, we're not supposed to take her.
I would think I'll give you my information. I would love to try to have the birthday like that. All right, you've got about 1 minute left, so kind of finish up.
Learning how to educate women in self-care.
Yeah. Where someone takes care of them instead of them take care of others.
And it's a women's event.
Right? So think about
All the service providers are women.
together.
And
That
then
has
you just
nothing
let all the veterans like
brings together a
suggest topics.
something
Talk about
and when they're there, then you talk to them.
they talk to them why they're getting
There you go. And before the service providers join, they have to take the trauma-informed care if they don't have that certification already. So everyone has something they're bringing to the table in these conversations.
How do we advertise it? How do we reach venturing in?
Really exclusive what they need. But what's going to be your thing? Is it like, I don't know, I'm just throwing shit out there. But like, what is the thing that you're going to do?
Yes.
Something, right?
Do a women's
All that stuff.
Yeah.
But come up with one thing.
Veterans Women's Spot with service providers.
Yes.
Female service providers. And the service providers, they're doing the facial, right?
So we have to recruit
Love
people
that.
who are willing to do this.
Yeah. Right.
They'll need like a speaker.
But what they get out of it is trauma-informed care training as a service provider, bringing it back from the beginning. if they don't have it already, right? So they all get that. They can bring it back to their agency, you know, as a thing that everyone should do this. I took this training, and also facials were fun. Hey.
So we can make flyers.
Word of mouth. Word of mouth.
I'll be doing that for a long time.
Make flyers and give them to the VA and STWS.
All right, I hate to break up the fun because this is good
Flyers,
stuff, but
Facebook,
we're in a
that's
time
free.
crunch. We have about 10 minutes
Well,
left,
no, it's
so
not actually, but close enough.
here's what I would like to do. So group 1, who's group 1? Group 1, there we go. Okay, so you don't have to move your seats back or whatever. Everybody kind of just get together. Group 1, I'm gonna give you the mic. Oh, perfect. So here's what I'm gonna have you do. Pick one person from your group who's gonna answer. Each group, let's be kind of conscious of time, so about 3 minutes or less per group. If you can answer the question, well, they're obviously not questions, but what's your veteran population? What challenge did you identify? What's your proposed solution? And who are your potential partners?
Testing. Nailed it. Okay. Women veterans proposed, or no, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Identified challenge. We were just talking about some sad things that a lot of, and statistically every woman who has served has experienced some degree of trauma, and namely sexual trauma while serving. So as we talked through all of these things in behavioral health, we talked about the providers that serve them and the importance of these providers having trauma-informed care background. Not all of the partners can get to that point, and there's various reasons for that. But to attract our female veterans and make sure that they're able to access services with service providers who have a trauma-informed care background, what is something fun that we can incorporate? And the idea came up of a self-care day where service providers could give, and now I'm in the solution, service providers could, and female service providers, right, because it's a women's event, could give facials to the female veterans, and they would get trauma-informed training before embarking on this event so that they can have this background, they can bring it back to their agencies as something that this was really enlightening and amazing, and everyone in our agency should participate, and let's check it out, you know, supervisor, to get this training for everybody. But it gets everyone doing something that is fun, that's creative, that's comforting, and also talking about the work that they do and potentially organically linking the women who are getting the facials to, you know, planting the seed for services, if not getting, you know, services on the spot, depending on how serious we're going with this. And then we talked about marketing and like flyers and Facebook and all that stuff. So, the end. Thank you.
Thank you. Sign me up. Very good. That is awesome. Yes, I want to hear the fun component from all of your groups. Very awesome.
Hello, everyone. We had families of veterans, and we ID'd the challenge as like recently transitioned family members who have lost resources. Sorry, I get tongue-tied. I go real fast. Our proposed solution was what we call the TAP 2 event. So everybody knows what TAP is. We wanted a follow-up TAP. So maybe, and just an example, maybe like 2 years afterwards, you get case management services. It would be like a second section where you would go through TAP maybe twice. Or if you have transitioned, maybe it's been a while since you've been through TAP, so you could just come back and you would have access to that especially. We went through buco buttload, actually, of potential partners that we could actually loop in for these solutions. So we service organizations such as the Eagles, the Elks, the CRF, which we call in Pierce County the Common Referral System, which links to 211, peer support systems, WorkSource, housing authorities, DSHS, DCYF, Healthcare Authority, quarterly check-ins for case management with an assigned case manager, local nonprofits, and then the execution that we specifically wanted that to look like in the community. We would actually do maybe dinners resource fairs to make it fun, arts and music fairs, and we would make sure that that's for all vets and spouses, or ex-spouses even. So that would be honorable and dishonorable charge. So yeah.
Excellent.
Excellent. Good stuff. All right.
Hello. Okay, so we looked at our community that we're serving as minority veterans, and we did an example from my community where there's a high minority population that is very far from a lot of the community service resource organizations, and it can be very, very hard for them to get support, especially if, because a lot of the organizations are only open from like 8 to 5. So we looked at it from the challenge was the distance and transportation needs to services for the minority population. Some of the potential solutions were, we wanted to kind of look at it and have like a big event where all of the resource providers could build trust. Start to build trust with that minority population community, invite them in, have some culturally relevant activities, make sure and really to try to make sure and that the minority population knows that the faces and starts to really interact with the people trying to provide the services. Additionally, we started thinking about some potential solutions. Obviously, we would love if all the community resources were moved together, and then it would be a lot easier. But since they're spread apart, we started thinking about like trying to develop a community ride-sharing, program for the minority population, where they can support each other with like van pools, ride shares, etc. To get to those services. Additionally, we started thinking about like trying to gather support and get the public transportation that is available to have a dedicated route that is just dedicated to providing rides to all the community service organizations on a repetitive route, hourly, however many time going out to that minority community in case they need it. Additionally, we were thinking about trying to have pop-up outreach events where the community service providers are actually doing pop-ups in the minority community, which is, like 15, 20 miles away from some of the community service organizations. Additionally, we thought about having those same pop-up events being done after hours and on the weekends, to make sure that they're doing those during that time. And then we stressed the need for repeatability of those outreach events. We started thinking about potentially proposing rotating hot desks where kind of our idea that we brainstormed was where, like a DSHS worker would rotate and take a hot desk and work at the housing authority. And, the different organizations would rotate and not just stick with where their central organization is at, but rotate to other organizations. Additionally, we talked about the need for having a really good, solid communication plan, utilizing social media, utilizing newspapers, etc., to try to really get the word out about all the different resources provided, and the availability of transportation. And then we talked about just having ongoing community needs assessments on the transportation needs of that minority community, really engaging, asking them, repeatedly, quarterly, however many times, to make sure that they're getting the support that they needed.
Excellent. Oh my God, I wish we had an hour. This is amazing. Thank you.
We worked to collaborate for the LGBTQ plus community, but none of our people in our group identified, so these are all just assumptions. We feel that there's biases both sides, the understanding needs both sides, communication both sides, identifying them or their own identity and as identifying them, trust, belonging, legal, along with medical and discrimination. They're less likely to access services or be offered services, especially if you're going off the appearance. Somebody might be intimidating, somebody might be uncomfortable. When we are talking about what a normal person may look like. For solutions, there's cultural diversity training programs focused on hiring and our peers to get them into our organization, so that way we can have a better collaboration and understanding, and then again that builds that trust. Not focusing on the outer
side, but focusing on the inner and the person and on their needs and what they need. And it says including DEI questions for hiring, professional development, and focus groups.
All right, last group.
Hey, how y'all doing? Alright, so this group was for focusing on rural veterans. We specifically looked at trying to address some mental health issues and access to that. The big idea that we just started workshopping at the end was around some sort of special interest event, such as fishing, movie, car show, something that brings in some sort of affinity, so we're not just all talking about negative stuff all the time. But specifically with free barbecue, because you know everybody likes some brisket. And our big problem question was around access. So how do we build access to these resources, especially in the rural community with a lack of infrastructure? So some of the solutions we came up with were telehealth resources, rotating mobile therapists that goes around, some transportation things, kind of like what some of these other groups were talking about, establishing group therapy sessions or something, so it's not all just individual one-on-one. Those tend to be harder to schedule. And then some cross-generational technology trainings, especially around mental health. A lot of our older veterans may not know how to get on Zoom or how to access Microsoft Teams or Google Meet or any of those kind of things. And then we listed probably every possible partnership we could think of. Whether they were community-based organizations like Eagles, Elks, community colleges, universities, libraries to actually host these events out in the community, hospitals to use their mental health facilities, not just relying on the VA for things, different county offices, community-based outreach clinics, veteran service providers like American Legion, VFW, DAV, those things. Some local businesses might have stuff, religious-based organizations, wellness centers, and some food banks.
Perfect.
Excellent. You all did so good. So I just want to make sure, does everyone feel mostly comfortable leaving here with an ability to implement some form of design thinking at the basic level? Do you know if you Google design thinking, if you go on Pinterest, and you put in the word design thinking, or you go on Canva, it will overwhelm you with the amount of information that is out there. Here's my contact information at the top. That's a way to connect with me. At the bottom is the workshop survey, and I realize that's covered, but I think you all get an email about that. But the most important QR code on here is that the SAP grant has now officially opened. It is right there. If you scan on there, it'll give you the application, all the information. As you can tell, I have such a passion for this because I think it's so needed in so many areas, not just in the arts. But do you all feel like you heard something today that you can kind of walk away with? And I'm so glad we focused in on what's relevant here in the state of Washington for the veteran population and the military community here. Thank you for your participation. It's not easy to sit with strangers and have conversations deeply with them, but you did it. And so thank you so much. I really appreciate you all being here, and all you, Brian.
All right, just one quick thing. I think I said it at the beginning, so if there's new folks who walked in, starting at from 5 to 7, we have our networking event over in the executive lobby. There's going to be some hors d'oeuvres, light refreshment, and then after that, if you want to go off on your own or go to pick out in the park, which is across the street over there, across the river. Pretty great event. So hope to see you all at the networking event, and I'll be there if you have great questions, anything like that. So thank you.
Thank you.